the ultimate guide to get started. This is an algorithm that I created. This took me probably around 3 months to understand on an intellectual level the different classes within real estate and the different approaches to investing in real estate. Lever is active or passive. We also talk about your level of risk tolerance and a particular metric that I call the maverick level. So starting with capital, the second one here, the thing about capital is a lot of people may consider this to be maybe one of your challenges when you're getting started. And so it's good to know what are the different options along the different lines of capital. And I'll be discussing each of these in great detail. So it is going to be a long video. We're going to get into a lot of detail. So as some of you may know, I invest in multifamily. I don't have any single family, and the capital that I used was myself and a partner. When it comes to capital, you really want to think about capital in terms of what is the capital that you're coming into with the partnership that you are envisioning might be wisest for you. So in other words, if you have either capital yourself or you have knowledge, meaning experience and knowledge, and you've done a lot of learning on real estate investing or investing in general, and you have hustle as well, meaning time that you can put into to source deals as well as manage operations once you have an asset, then those are really all the parameters of the golden triangle of investing. Most people don't come in with all of those things. And so if you have two or one of those things, you simply find that partner that might have the other component of those things. They don't necessarily need to be a partner in the deal, meaning having equity in the deal and someone that you are working 30, 40 years with. They could be someone that partners in as a capital partner, or you have the capital, you don't have the experience. So you're the capital partner and you are able to provide that capital to an investor that you trust, and then you can learn on that deal. So the triangle, that golden triangle, is something that is important to keep in mind. And so that's the capital that you should think of, is what is it that ultimately you decide to partner with, and you and that partner, how much capital do you come in with? So on the scale of capital, I will start from left to right, having low capital all the way to high capital. And so when it comes to capital, many of you may know about wholesaling being the technique where you don't need a lot of capital and you really don't necessarily need any, but you definitely need to have some hustle. And so on the other side of capital, you need a lot of capital in order to be a developer. And so a lot of times you are buying raw land or land that already has utilities on it and so on and so forth. And then you could be waiting a year or so before you can be allowed to build on that land. And then you have to build from, sometimes you have to do infills, so on and so forth. I don't need to get into development too much in this introductory video. Development is really not necessarily going to be the approach that you want to take when starting out for 95+% of people. Okay, so back to wholesaling. So wholesaling is the practice of obtaining a property under contract and assigning it to the buyer that best fits with that deal. And you are a connector of sorts. You're connecting the people that have maybe a deal that they don't see as a seller, or it could be an on-market deal. So the realtor does not see how to make this deal work. And then you connect this deal by seeing how it can be made to work. You might be obtaining it under contract creatively. There might be a on-market deal that has been sitting on the market, and I'm watching some of these deals, and I can come in, and if it's a more experienced realtor, I would be very transparent with them, because they would be my source of deals very frequently long term. So I want to be very upfront about what I'm looking to do. And I'm really creating a win-win solution. This is something that sometimes wholesalers get a bad rap, because they are not always, I would say, they're not always coming from experience. So wholesaling is something that I actually recommend to consider after you have had some experience in real estate. So that's a really, really uncommon, I would say, consideration, because wholesaling has the low capital component. But what happens is that it is much, much easier. And also you have a lot more credibility as an investor that has already done deals. When you go then to learn to start wholesaling, you really know, and you can really share with your buyers and then also with the sellers, that you know that perspective of what an investor is looking for. And then you can share a deal, and you can get this deal under contract with the components, the terms that make the most sense to an investor. Really, I would say, wiser approach to wholesale is approaching it once you've already had some experience in investing. Maybe you have bought some of your deals and now you're out of capital and you don't feel like raising capital, or you don't feel like bringing in a capital investor. Now you can learn wholesaling. So that's one component, right? But you will need to reflect within yourself, what is your degree of comfort and ease with regard to getting a deal under contract that is, well, you have your EMD, your earnest money deposit, that could be at stake, that you would want to minimize how much EMD you have on the contract, but usually most markets will expect around 1% of the purchase price. So we'll get more into wholesaling when one of my next videos, I talk about analyzing deals for potential wholesale. And because I am working on this approach, I'll go through really bit by bit in a screen recording how I'm looking at a deal and how I would analyze that deal for an investor to buy, and so on and so forth. So quite a bit of detail there. So I'll leave that with the wholesale. Like I said, we will probably upload this without editing at first, just so that I can really be sharing this information with people as soon as possible. We'll be putting in the the bookmarks, and so you can skip ahead if you're more interested in certain areas. If you are aware of Bigger Pockets, I think they're always talking about house hacking. I would say that this really is less important. It's really not necessarily the path that I would go down if you live in a high cost of living area. I got my 14 units multifamily before I ever was able to buy a home. I live in a high cost of living area. I live in San Diego. So house hacking means that you purchase a home for yourself to live in, thus requiring much less percentage down. I have a video talking all about house hacking, so you should definitely watch that video if you want to learn more about house hacking in particular. Sorry. So if you cannot house hack, or you can't get a deal in your market because maybe it's a competitive market, or it's a high cost of living market, don't worry about it. You're not actually missing out on anything. You can be an investor in real estate without having your own home. I didn't feel that I was really solid in a way. There's so much mind story around being an investor and investing in general. And so it was really a silly belief that the mind had. And now I practice with conscious investing, being the watcher of the mind. So this being the mind, I step back and I'm the watcher of it. So the silly things that sometimes go that our mind tells us, such as, well, you gotta have your own home, own your own home before, you are fully whatever. Yes, you can watch those thoughts and simply smile at them, because you don't need to believe your thoughts. So this is a great place actually for us to pause. Let's do some conscious breaths. It will be a really great place for us to practice. We can be learning and actively working on investing while maintaining some awareness of the breath. So close your eyes, please, and I'm going to do the same. And we'll take breaths in for a count of 3 and then out with an audible sigh for a count of 3. So breathe in, 1, 2, 3, and out with an audible sigh. Excellent. And several more, keeping your eyes closed until I tell you. Breathe in for a count of 3. 1, 2, 3, and out. Good. And in. 1, 2, 3, and out. Keeping your eyes closed. Notice the spaciousness that we have created. This is where the ultimate wisdom can arise, and you can tap into the power of true wisdom. It's that power of developing fusion energy, limitless energy, versus an atomic bomb. Just because we can does not mean that we should. So when you're ready, slowly open your eyes, keeping some awareness of the spaciousness that we have created and the breath as you breathe in and out. The power of the breath is that it cuts the momentum of the mind. Our minds are what cause us to think far ahead and think about a lot of reasons not to take action. And that's okay. You can practice watching the mind. It is a wonderful tool, an incredible tool, but it doesn't always work for you. So as you practice watching the mind, it lessens in its power over you. And when you do use the mind, it is that much sharper. Okay, let's go on now with awareness of our breath and talk about, we'll move on from house hacking. There's a lot of information on that, and I'll have a video talking about that in great detail. Capital required could be as low as 0%. Or 3.5% more commonly if you are not a veteran, if you're not a physician, if you don't get a USDA loan, and so on and so forth. Okay, so next up, in terms of increasing capital, is purchasing land and purchasing mobile home parks. P is mobile home park, and this is a very interesting asset class. It is also referred to in the Maverick level down below, which I will share later. It may need to be a different video. Mobile home parks are a little bit, I would say, not necessarily as intuitive for everyone. If you have a background and familiarity with a city or an area, or a personal familiarity with it, that is a wonderful, and if you're interested in it, with all of that knowledge and background, it's a wonderful asset class to consider. You do need to understand land, utilities. You need to understand providing that. The risk, okay, so this is only talking about capital here. Capital is lower typically to get started. It's extremely common to be able to obtain seller financing with mobile home parks, with parks. So, but the risk is not necessarily smaller. You will need to have a significant amount of understanding and learning before you should proceed in the mobile home parks. You need to likely look for mobile home parks that are able to be already managed or have a current manager in place, because it is a whole other animal. The Maverick level of mobile home park is high, meaning it can be a trickier asset class. And you really need to either have that extensive knowledge that you need to plan to obtain, or you bring in a partner that has experience in parks. It's extremely, I would say, quite specialized in a way, is how I think of it, because you need to be considering things like you need to have enough lots, enough homes on the park that makes a park worthwhile for you. Okay, unless it's in a high cost of living area and each lot is already renting for sometimes 600 or 800. That's different. That's specialized, right? You're gonna, if that's right for you, then that means that maybe you're living in a high cost of living area, you understand that area, and you have that local advantage. None of these approaches are wrong for anyone. It's tuning in to that wisdom and the guidance that we're always receiving. You can make any of this work, any strategy work. And so it just depends on your unique experience and background. But to talk more generally about mobile home parks, very easy to get seller financing. They tend to like a good amount of down payment though, but you can get started in a park relatively more easily. And it's there, the risk and the maverick level comes in because there's a lot of specialized knowledge you need to obtain about maintaining septic systems. If it has that, sometimes there's a cesspool that, that word is what you think of as as what it sounds like. But there might be city sewer, which is great. That would be ideal. That's ideal. But sometimes you can have even hundreds of thousands for a septic that needs a complete renovation. So just, being aware of some of those things. In terms of the water, if it's on city water, great. Of course, it's ideal for your parks to be on city water and city sewer, but if you can get a better deal if you're able to come in and you have some knowledge or you have an experienced operator there. And even very frequently, I've spoken with many mobile home park owners and managers. We have this experience in mobile home parks because I researched them extensively as an asset that I was considering, and I have a lot of background in terms of understanding that from someone that I have owned no parks. So it's definitely something that there's great potential because you don't need to be managing the homes if the park has mostly privately owned homes. But if you have park owned homes, and those are your homes, you need to manage them, you need to renovate them, you need to get a renter in, and so on and so forth. And then you can rent to them, and you can even seller finance that home to them. They, want to be owners. Just to clarify also, there's no limit to the variety of mobile home parks. There's no limit to the differences between people. There are mobile home parks that are, have ocean views in California, and with mobile home parks, you have owners. They are really owners. They have pride of ownership. And so you're not needing to deal with any maintenance whatsoever, but you have to maintain the land. You have to maintain the utilities. These are multiple. You might have 50. You might even come in and with your first deal, you might look at a 30, a 50 lot type park. That's 30 families. That's 50 families. So there's so much to be mindful of when you're coming in and you're owning something like this. You have this responsibility of stewardship of the home for these 30, 50, so on families, right? So that's mobile home parks. The other thing about mobile home parks is, the managers, they've also shared with me that you don't need to be a septic tank experienced person. You hire the experience in, right? The managers are not necessarily experienced in septic tanks. They know how to source. They have the contacts for the specialists of maintaining wells and maintaining septic tanks. So you don't have to know all of these things, but you do have to know a bit about the risk involved. You really need to understand that. If you buy a park that needs a lot of infill, there are infill specialists. So some parks are vacant. Of course, you're going to get pennies on the dollar for something like that. And because the risk is massive. If it's already 85 to more percent occupied, well, fantastic. You really don't have that much risk, but you have to look back at, is the pattern of occupation of occupied lots increasing or is it decreasing? So on and so forth, right? Okay. So now let's talk about land investing. So land is also potentially very frequently seller finance. It can require much less capital. And of course, just like with parks, land is also as vast and different as you can imagine, as people are. You could have land in Hawaii, you could have land in the desert in California, in Joshua Tree. There's a lot of land for $5,000 a pop, right? And of course, it may have no utilities. It would also potentially take hundreds of thousands, even depending on where that land is located, to run utilities to it. So, of course, that land is available for the $5,000 a pop or something like that. Never be looking at deals by thinking that this appears as a deal. It can be the most expensive deal you can imagine. Okay, so note what the mind does in terms of it's a little bit, it can be a little bit like a little bit of greed. That's okay. That's okay. You can smile at it. Okay, but let's take it down and notice, well, we can also really see and perceive, okay, if it's something that looks too good to be true, often it is. So land, seeing if this land is dependent on the uses for land. There's the approaches that people take are, for example, buying and holding. That's much rarer because you want to either develop that land or you want to sell it, flip it to someone that will develop that or use that land. So land is really similar, potentially, at least what it is right now is very similar to wholesale. I think of those as almost, you can picture them slightly similarly, because if you see a plot of land and you see that there's something about it that others don't see, well, you can source or you can connect with people that source for you that particular buyer, then great. But land is much more about finding the buyers, getting a CRM that can help you organize your email list of buyers, or creating a Facebook group of certain kinds of buyers and growing that Facebook group, for example, growing your email list, and so on and so forth. So if you focus on, you could buy land and you could rent it out to farmers. You could buy land and you could then sell it with seller financing to people who want to bring their tiny homes on the land. This has to be land then with utilities already accessible, or that you know exactly how much they would be, and they would be cost effective. You could buy land that is perfectly situated for everyone goes across this area, and so you build a billboard or you sell it the rights to build billboards there. Of course, develop the land yourself. So you can that would go into development more, right? But so bringing it back to land, you can, if you are to buy land and sell it on seller financing to people who are using it, that means that they don't need a lot of capital. They can really pay you with monthly payments, and you could even finance it at 8 or 12%. And so you could be getting an almost guaranteed 12% or something like that of a return. And you don't need to manage anything. No management of anything whatsoever is great, because I can tell you that with buying a hold multifamily, always it's managing something. You are managing something, and yes, you might have a little bit of time. It's not like stocks, take actions on stocks. I don't even know what the terminology there is, but you can't wait, right? But with managing buy and hold, you have the time to kind of think about what your options, to research them, and so on and so forth. If you are just too busy, like I am sometimes, it gets put on the back burner, and sadly, and then you tend to it when you can, but it's not a passive, right? We're talking about capital here. There's degree of passivity on another metric. Yeah, it's not a passive investment. Just in general, let's be clear. It is going to require some degree of management, and sometimes it can take up a lot of your time when you're managing renovations, when you're being more active, and you're still working to stabilize the property. So, okay, back on to the topic of land. That really is a good snippet about land investing that you can often purchase with seller financing. And so even perhaps with, you could offer, 10, 20% down, and you don't have to go to a bank. It's more difficult actually to obtain bank financing with land. So seller finance is almost the norm. So you wouldn't need to worry about credit and things like that. You should always be concerned about your credit though, just so you know, because as an investor, you need to be working on that, right? You need to be working on these aspects of your investing wellness, because it's going to greatly affect the potential options you have as an investor. Okay, so here, when I'm saying out of state here, the note here is OOS, out of state. It's referring more to if you are in a higher cost of living area, for example, and you want to think about out of state investing in a variety of asset classes. There's potential there for it to be lower capital than otherwise. So it's labeled there just to designate that as an option for those of you that are in higher cost of living areas. So for the most part, though, if you are in a higher cost of living area, it may still make sense for some of you to look at how to invest in your local market, because the biggest builder of wealth is appreciation. So it's the everything that is there out on the interwebs about cash flow. Of course, that is the potential, but in reality, the most powerful avenue of building wealth that real estate provides is the appreciation and depreciation on your taxes. That is oftentimes the biggest lever, because if you have a 20% increase on your asset and it's $1 million asset versus $300,000 asset, that 20% is vastly different between the two. And then if you have any kind of W-2 job, but then if you are to qualify as a real estate professional in some way or another, you could potentially depreciate on an asset that you own. It could be 30-40% of the income that you would otherwise be losing to taxes. And so a lot of times these levers in real estate, the appreciation and the depreciation being some of the biggest ones, along with leverage, of course, you could be getting into a multifamily at 3.5% down, and then you have that whole 96% that is being 96.5% being leveraged, that the bank is helping you to purchase this asset that you can then control, and then you have all of the benefits of it. So you have the leveraging of the bank, and then you have the principal pay down. Your tenants are paying down the principal, and you have that cash flow, maybe, depending. And if you don't, because you're house hacking in the high cost of living market, that's of course just fine, no problem. Then we move on to multifamily, I'll go back to buying notes in a little bit. So meanwhile, multifamily, as I mentioned, you really want to consider holistically reflecting and also networking, going to local groups and meeting the other investors in your area. So recall the golden triangle of investing. If you have maybe some hustle, you maybe you have some time, and then but you don't have, the knowledge or the capital, then okay, you will be you might be able to get that lower percentage of equity in a deal, but it helps you get started and you get the experience and so on and so forth. And so, maybe you're putting up the capital that you have, but then your investor also puts up capital and they bring in experience, and then you get that smaller relative to your capital of the equity. And of course, that's fine, right? That is there's the value that each partner is bringing. Maybe you have the capital, you don't have the time, you don't have the hustle, you really just, you're a professional and you're concentrating on, well, I want to get some experience, and I want to get all the benefits of real estate investing that I mentioned. But you don't have experience, and you don't want to spend any time. Okay, so find someone that has the experience and has time to hustle. So then you are the capital partner, and you bring in the capital, and then you give them that component of the equity to manage and source the deal and to make the deal happen, and so on and so forth. Okay, so just the bigger picture of thinking about how to get into some of these areas that require higher amounts of capital, for example. And single family, I didn't list here, but I need to list here. And then commercial real estate, CRE, is commercial real estate. So commercial real estate, as some of you know, it may not be as intuitive to people. For me, why multifamily works is I've lived in condos, apartments, rentals all my life. And I simply didn't know anything about real estate investing before 2020, before I learned about it. And so I intuitively understand what it's like to live in a multifamily, and that is just as something that I intuitively know how to value at, how to evaluate some of the location characteristics and so on and so forth. And it was overall learning about it, felt there was a degree of ease. That ease is important to tap into, to be aware of the ease that you have within the body. A lot of times you see on social media and whatnot that you actually need to push forward through your fear, and you have to pursue what it is that feels fearful or scary to you. I would say that from the wisdom perspective, it's better to understand it in a sense of how do you see that when practicing watching the mind. If the mind has fear going into something and you practice being the watcher of that, not believing necessarily what the mind says, then okay, that's okay. But sometimes there is actual physical changes and physical sensations that I'm referring to is a really great indicator, because the mind can actually work against you and tell you something that's not actually the case, such as, well, this is, a scary thing. But if you still have some degree of ease in the body, then there's actually wisdom that's in our bodies, much more so than sometimes when we just listen to the mind. So that wisdom is, if you feel a degree of ease still, then that is a great indicator. And so it is when you learn about all these asset classes and the power that they have, and you hear about the success stories, not the failures. People just don't usually tend to talk about that or feature guests that are talking about how much I've lost in this asset class. It recognize that it is a limitation there in research terms, right? That's just not accurate. It's not a fully representative sampling of what people's experiences have been. It's actually much better to get into an asset class and a market that is much more intuitive for you. You can make that work, even if it goes against traditional types of wisdom, and if you, nothing trumps your personal knowledge and your personal experience and the unfair advantages that you personally have. So you can actually, the best things to do is to understand these frameworks, okay? The general risks that is all of this knowledge is out there, and then you need to tap into your personal experiences, your personality itself, your risk tolerance, and then of course tapping into presence and the wisdom of your body. Then you can most wisely move forward in the way that is wisest for your individual situation. All of these, people that talk about, oh, this is the right thing for anyone getting started, wholesale. You just have to do wholesaling. That's just completely false. That's just not the case. That is not the wisest path for probably most people. I didn't have any comfort, or I didn't even consider wholesale at all. And that just would not have been wise for me. Even once I was in multifamily, and also I had basically spent my capital in multifamily. I didn't, necessarily just think just because of that, I'm now relegated to one thing or another, wholesale, instead of I could bring in partners, or I could, do a variety of different other things. But in terms of my personal journey, I have this interest now in wholesale because of my experiences in multifamily. I've both bought and sold multifamily, and I've sold multifamily traditionally and on seller financing. So I really just feel that degree of comfort now in terms of knowing what's a worthwhile deal for investors, and also what are the creative ways to get a property under a contract in a property that's on the market, for example. So I would say approaches that I've used myself is tuning into presence and just tuning into sensing what are the opportunities that are most intuitive for me. Those are the best options. It's not going to be the shiny new thing, and it's not going to be an approach that someone tells you is right for everybody. There is just no approach like that for everybody in a specific circumstance. There's just no approach that's really like that. Wholesale is actually not going to be right for most people getting started. For most people, maybe if you have less capital, it would make more sense to either get a job in real estate and learn more about a certain sector that you're interested in. Maybe you're interested in commercial real estate and you want to get a job there, or of course, bringing in partners. And so you can really, share, okay, well, you have the hustle maybe in that case, or you have some experience. And so then you can bring on a capital partner. That would be a better approach than to wholesale if you don't intuitively sense that wholesale is the approach that makes the most sense for you. If you're not mostly someone that you really like to be a connector and you tolerate probably some degree of risk as a wholesaler, then, though, if you are those things, that could be a great approach for you. Regardless of how much capital you have, you could, be really good at seeing how to put together a deal, and you could be really good at, connecting with people. Maybe you have, you're very organized and you have a CRM that allows you to follow up with people regularly, and you develop along great lists of buyers and so on and so forth. So those are just some of the components of a variety of different capital intensive asset classes within real estate. We have many more that will be for other videos down the line. This algorithm is available to you if you sign up make sure you sign up for, we'll be sharing my wholesale creative deals, especially. I'm especially in the Texas market. And then of course I'll be intermittently just sharing some of the resources that I develop. And they'll be available to anyone on that email list at consciousinvestor.com. Okay, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for watching. Please comment below, what is one thing that you found or that you heard that was helpful for you? And please make sure that you subscribe for more content on the conscious investing approach if you found this helpful. To take a conscious breath now, and perhaps you may want to watch next video that I talk about how to afford to purchase a home in a high cost of living area like Southern California where I live. And otherwise, maybe you can take a moment and pause and just take that to be your YouTube experience at this time. You could click off of YouTube and do something, get up and do what things you need to do, maybe take some investing actions or network with others who do investing. And so that means that potentially this could negatively affect the reach and the results of this video if you were to click off of YouTube, and that's really okay. If you still want to support, please make sure that you subscribe, like, and turn on the notification bell on this video, so that you can show that you are interested in this type of content, and then that way that doesn't necessarily have to totally devastate how this content gets shown to other people who may also benefit from it. Thank you so much. Either way, if you decide to do more learning here on YouTube or just more entertainment and enjoy your time on YouTube, be present with that and enjoy it to its full depth. Enjoy the taking it easy and relaxing. Or if you are to decide to take this moment and get into presence and maybe take other actions, that's great as well. Doing it with a conscious approach, fully moving into either decision that you take, is going to allow there to be no negativity, whichever decision you decide to make. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.